Imagine you're a 16-year-old girl, tucked into your dormitory bed in a remote town in northeastern Nigeria, dreaming of acing your physics exam the next morning. It's April 14th, 2014, and the government girls' secondary school in Chibok, Borno State. Feels like a sanctuary of hope, a place where you're defying the odds to pursue an education. But at 11 p.m., that dream shatters. Armed men storm your school, their shouts echoing to the halls as they set buildings ablaze, herd you and 275 of your classmates onto trucks, and vanish into the dense Sambisa forest. You've just become one of the Chibok Schoolgirls, kidnapped by the Islamist militant group Boko Haram, in an act that would shock the world and spark a global movement. Welcome to Global Shadows, where we uncover the darkest crimes against the innocent, revealing the pain, resilience, and lessons hidden in their aftermath. Today, we're diving into the Chibok abduction, a tragedy that saw 276 mostly Christian female students, aged 16 to 18, torn from their school by Boko Haram, a jihadist group whose name translates to Western Education is Forbidden. 57 girls escaped that night, jumping from moving trucks, but 219 were taken deep into the forest, where they faced forced marriages, sexual slavery, and starvation. Some, like Amina Ali, who escaped in 2016, reported that at least 6 girls died in captivity. Over the years, more than 100 have been freed through negotiations, but as of April 2025, over 80 remain missing. Their fate a haunting question mark. Boko Haram, founded in 2002, had been waging a brutal insurgency in Nigeria's northeast since 2009, aiming to establish an Islamic caliphate by targeting civilians, schools, and Western influences. By 2014, they'd killed tens of thousands and displaced millions. The Chibok girls, targeted for daring to seek an education, became a symbol of their cruelty, but also of global resistance, as the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign, backed by figures like Michelle Obama and Malala Yousafzai, went viral, pressuring the Nigerian government to act. Yet, the government's response was slow, marked by denial and inaction, leaving parents like Lawan Zana to form search parties, venturing into the bush with makeshift weapons. Survivors like Hawa Ishaya, freed in 2017, endured beatings and coercion, but held on to hope, now studying at the American University of Nigeria, aspiring to careers in media and entrepreneurship. The Chibok abduction wasn't an isolated incident. It marked the start of a wave of mass kidnappings, with over 1,400 students abducted in Nigeria since 2014, according to Amnesty International, including 287 in Kuriga in 2024. The girls' plight exposed Nigeria's security failures, the marginalization of the Northeast, and the global challenge of protecting education in conflict zones. What drove Boko Haram to target these girls? And how did their abduction change the fight for education and safety in Nigeria? Join us as we honor the Chibok Schoolgirls, their courage, and the lessons they've left behind. What's the most shocking detail about the Chibok abduction so far? Share your thoughts in the comments. On April 14th, 2014, the small town of Chibok in Borno State, Nigeria, was a pocket of resilience in a region under siege. Nestled in the northeast, Chibok was a mostly Christian enclave in a majority Muslim area. Its dusty streets lined with modest homes, and a community determined to educate its children despite the growing threat of Boko Haram. The government girls' secondary school had been closed for weeks due to escalating violence. Boko Haram had already attacked 50 schools in the region, killing students and teachers, but reopened that day for final exams, drawing girls from surrounding villages. Students like Hawa Ishaya, 16, and Amina Ali, 16, gathered in the dormitory, their laughter filling the air as they studied physics, dreaming of futures as doctors, teachers, or journalists in a region where less than half of girls attended primary school. But the peace of that night was a fragile illusion. Boko Haram, a jihadist group founded in 2002 by Muhammad Yusuf, had been terrorizing northeastern Nigeria since 2009, aiming to impose a strict Islamic caliphate. Their name, meaning Western Education is Forbidden, reflected their hatred for secular education, especially for girls, whom they believed should be confined to domestic roles. By 2014, they'd killed over 27,000 people and displaced 2 million, targeting schools to disrupt Western influence. The Chibok school a symbol of defiance, was in their crosshairs. Around 11 p.m., as the girls slept, dozens of Boko Haram fighters rolled into town in trucks, armed with AK-47s and machetes. They set fire to the examination hall, the flames lighting up the night as they stormed the dormitory, shouting in Hausa, "Where are the girls who seek Western education?" The students, roused from sleep, were herded at gunpoint onto trucks, some too terrified to move, others whispering prayers as they were driven toward the Sambisa forest, a lawless expanse the militants had turned into their stronghold. In those frantic first moments, 57 girls managed to escape, jumping from the trucks and hiding in the bushes. But for the 219 others, a nightmare was just beginning. What kind of hatred drives a group to target schoolgirls? And how did this quiet night turn into a global crisis? Did you know about Boko Haram's hatred for education? What's your first impression of this tragedy? As the trucks carrying the 276 Chibok schoolgirls rumbled into the Sambisa forest on April 14, 2014, the girls faced a descent into terror that would test their resilience in unimaginable ways. The forest, a sprawling 60,000 square kilometer expanse in Borno State, was Boko Haram's stronghold, a maze of dense trees and hidden camps where the militants operated beyond the reach of Nigerian forces. The girls, aged 16 to 18, were packed tightly, some clinging to each other, others silently praying as the militants shouted threats in Hausa, vowing to teach them the ways of Islam. In those chaotic first hours, 57 girls escaped, jumping from the moving trucks and running into the bush. Some, like Mary Kay, hid for hours before finding their way back to Chibok. But for the remaining 219, the forest became a prison of fear and uncertainty. Boko Haram wasted no time imposing their ideology. The girls were taken to base camps, where they were subjected to brutal conditions, near starvation, beatings, and coercion to convert to Islam. Many, like Hawa Ishaya, were forced into domestic servitude, cooking and cleaning for fighters, while others, like Amina Ali, were pressured into marriages with militants, a euphemism for sexual slavery. Amina, who escaped in 2016 with her baby, later told CNN that at least 6 girls died in captivity, some from starvation, others from snake bites or airstrikes during Nigerian military operations. Survivors reported being moved constantly between camps, living in huts under constant guard, their days filled with fear of violence or being used as suicide bombers, a fate some Chibok girls reportedly met, according to community leaders. Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shiko released videos mocking the girls' families in the global outcry, declaring the girls had been married off and converted, their education replaced with a life of submission. The Nigerian military, despite a 2015 offensive backed by the US, UK, and France, struggled to penetrate the forest, their delayed response criticized as ineffective. Early claims that the girls had been freed proved false, eroding trust in the government. For the girls, each day was a fight for survival, clinging to hope amidst unimaginable hardship. How did they endure such horrors? And what kept their spirits alive in the face of such cruelty? Can you imagine the fear the Chibok girls faced? What do you think about their bravery? The Chibok schoolgirls were more than victims. They were dreamers, fighters, and symbols of resilience whose stories continue to inspire a decade later. Hawa Ishaya, 16 at the time of her abduction, endured 3 years in captivity, refusing forced marriage and instead becoming a slave to other captives, treating wounded Boko Haram fighters while clinging to hope of seeing her family again. Freed in 2017, she tearfully reunited with her loved ones and now, at 27, studies communication and multimedia at the American University of Nigeria, aspiring to a career in media. Amina Ali, also 16 when kidnapped, escaped in 2016 after 2 years, carrying her baby daughter, now 8, who faced a stigma as a child of Boko Haram. Amina, now 27, is pursuing entrepreneurship, determined to build a future despite the challenges of single motherhood. Mary Kay, who escaped the day after the abduction, arrived at the American University of Nigeria unable to speak English, but by 2016 was accepted into university, now mentoring other students on resilience and time management. Sarada Dauda, kidnapped at 16, spent nearly a decade in captivity before escaping in 2023. sharing her story with the New York Times. She endured forced marriage and starvation, but held on to her faith, which sustained her through the darkest moments. Rabiat, a pseudonym for her safety, was freed in 2023 after almost 10 years, returned to Maiduguri with 3 children born in captivity. She completed a de-radicalization program and now seeks to rebuild her life. Of the 276 girls taken, 57 escaped that first night, and over 100 have been freed through negotiations, like the 82 released in 2017 after the Nigerian government exchanged Boko Haram prisoners. Yet, over 80 remain missing, with estimates suggesting about a third may have died, some from childbirth, others in airstrikes, according to Aisha Muhammad Oibod of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. The survivors, many now studying at the new foundation school in Yola, are pursuing dreams of becoming lawyers, actresses, and accountants, their education funded by the government and donors. Their courage has turned a tragedy into a testament of hope. But for the families of the missing, like Solomon Mena, who believes his daughter Deborah is still alive, the wait continues. Who were these girls, and how did their strength redefine their legacy? Which Chibok girl story inspired you the most? What do you think about their resilience? Boko Haram's abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls wasn't a random act of violence. It was a calculated strike rooted in a deep-seated ideology that saw education, especially for girls, as a threat to their vision of an Islamic caliphate. Founded in 2002 by Muhammad Yusuf in Maiduguri, Boko Haram, meaning Western education is forbidden in Hausa, began as a religious movement but morphed into a brutal jihadist group by 2009, fueled by resentment over corruption, poverty, and the marginalization of Nigeria's northeast. Under Abubakar Shako's leadership after Yusuf's death, the group's tactics grew more violent, targeting civilians, churches, and schools to destabilize the government and impose strict Islamic law. By 2014, they'd killed over 27,000 and displaced 2 million, according to the UN Development Program, often abducting women and girls. Amnesty International estimated 2,000 had been taken since 2014, many forced into sexual slavery or used as cooks and suicide bombers. The Chibok girls were a symbolic target, in a region where girls' education was already scarce. Over 50% of women in the Northeast were illiterate, per a 2021 UNICEF report. Boko Haram saw the government girls' secondary school as a direct challenge to their ideology. The girls, aged 16 to 18, represented a future they wanted to erase. Educated, independent women who could defy their control. Shako mocked the global outcry in videos, calling the girls his trump card and claiming they'd been married off, a tactic to assert dominance and gain notoriety. The abduction also served a strategic purpose. Analysts like Oyewole Ojwell note that the global attention emboldened Boko Haram, inspiring more kidnappings to paint the Nigerian state as powerless and attract recruits. The group's tactics were enabled by systemic failures. Nigeria's military was underfunded and corruption siphoned resources, while the government's brutal counterterrorism operations, like the 2014 Jiwa barracks killings, radicalized more youth, pushing them into Boko Haram's ranks. The Chibok abduction wasn't just about ideology. It was a power play, a way to exploit Nigeria's weaknesses and terrorize a nation. What drove Boko Haram to such cruelty, and how did their actions expose the deeper cracks in Nigeria's fight against insurgency? What do you think drove Boko Haram to target the Chibok girls? Were their motives clear to you? The abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls on April 14, 2014, sent shockwaves across the globe, igniting a movement that exposed both the power of collective action and the limits of international pressure. Within days, Nigerian women launched a hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign on social media, a hashtag that exploded worldwide, shared by millions, including Michelle Obama, Malala Yousafzai, and Angelina Jolie, turning Chibok into a global symbol of the fight for girls' education. Protests erupted in Nigeria and beyond. Parents like Lawan Zana, whose daughter Aisha was taken, joined vigils in Abuja, demanding action, while international offers of help poured in. The U.S., UK, France, and China sent military advisors, and Barack Obama deployed a team to assist Nigeria's forces, though tensions over human rights abuses, like the Jiwa barracks killings, complicated cooperation. with Nigerian officials rejecting a British rescue mission after locating the girls in Sambisa Forest that Nigeria's government, led by President Goodluck Jonathan, faced fierce criticism for its sluggish response, initially denying the abductions, then failing to act swiftly, eroding public trust. By 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari promised to crush Boko Haram, but the group's leader, Abubakar Shekau, remained at large and military efforts faltered. Negotiations brokered by the International Committee of the Red Cross led to the release of 82 girls in 2017 in exchange for Boko Haram prisoners. But the global attention also backfired. Boko Haram saw the girls as a trump card, making rescue harder, as noted by a Maiduguri military commander. The campaign, while raising awareness, couldn't stop the violence. Amnesty International documented 17 mass abductions since 2014, with over 1,700 children taken. The Nigerian military's heavy-handed tactics, including airstrikes that killed some girls, drew condemnation, while corruption and underfunding left the Northeast vulnerable. Families of the missing, like Solomon Mena, felt abandoned, with little government communication. Mena learned through a freed girl that his daughter Deborah survived a bombing but remains missing. The world rallied, but for many, the promise of rescue turned into a decade of waiting. How did the global outcry shape the Chibok crisis? And what did it reveal about the challenges of fighting terror in Nigeria? What do you think about the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign? Did it help or hinder the rescue efforts? The Chibok abduction didn't just scar a community. It reshaped Nigeria's fight for education and security, leaving a legacy that's both inspiring and sobering over a decade later. The tragedy sparked immediate action. The Safe Schools initiative was launched in 2014 to improve school security, and the Nigerian government invested 144.8 billion naira, that's equivalent of $314.5 million, in 2022 to protect schools per UNICEF. Schools across the North adopted stricter measures. Armed guards, perimeter fencing, and evacuation drills became standard. Those Save the Children notes that between 2014 and 2022, 1,743 children were still kidnapped, 200 killed, and 25 schools destroyed. The Chibok girls' plight also galvanized global advocacy for girls' education. Campaigns like hashtag Bring Back Our Girls inspired movements worldwide, and survivors like Hawa Ishaya became symbols of resilience, pursuing degrees and mentoring others. Yet, the legacy is marred by failure. The abduction set a grim precedent. Boko Haram's tactics inspired a wave of copycat kidnappings by bandits and other groups, with over 1,400 students abducted since 2014, including 287 in Kuriga in 2024. Analysts like Oyewole Ojwell argue that the global attention gave Boko Haram notoriety, emboldening them to target more schools to undermine the state. Nigeria's government has struggled to adapt. Amnesty International criticized the lack of credible investigations into security failures, and military tactics like airstrikes have killed captives, including Chibok girls. Education in the Northeast remains under threat. UNICEF reports that 1,500 schools closed due to insecurity between 2009 and 2022, and 2,295 teachers were killed. Survivors face new challenges. Many, like Amina Ali's daughter, endure stigma as children of Boko Haram, while others in de-radicalization camps report being pressured to marry surrendered fighters, per Reuters. On X, sentiment in 2024 reflects frustration. One user wrote, "Chibok showed us schools aren't safe. Why haven't we fixed this?" The Chibok girls' courage continues to inspire, but their tragedy underscores an urgent need for systemic change. What can their legacy teach us about protecting education in crisis? And how do we honor their fight through action? How do you think Chibok changed education in Nigeria? What's the most important lesson from this tragedy? The Chibok abduction on April 14, 2014, is a chilling reminder that education, a fundamental right, can become a battleground when ideology and terror collide, leaving 276 schoolgirls to suffer at the hands of Boko Haram, with over 80 still missing as of April 2025. At Global Shadows, we honor the Chibok girls, Hawa, Amina, Mary, Saratu, Rabiat, and all those whose names we may never know, by sharing lessons to protect our children and communities from such horrors. First, advocate for education in conflict zones. Support initiatives like the Safe Schools Initiative, which can fund security measures, counseling, and rebuilding efforts, ensuring schools remain sanctuaries, not targets, especially for girls who face unique risks, as seen in Chibok, where 50% of women are literate. Next, be vigilant about security threats in your community. Boko Haram's attack succeeded due to ignored warnings. Parents and schools must push for early warning systems, like community patrols or government hotlines, to report suspicious activity and demand accountability from authorities to act swiftly, unlike the delayed response in Chibok. Support survivors of conflict by reducing stigma. Many Chibok girls, like Amina's daughter, face discrimination as children of Boko Haram. So foster empathy in your children, teaching them to embrace peers from difficult backgrounds, creating a culture of inclusion that prevents the isolation Boko Haram exploited. Finally, amplify global advocacy. Campaigns like #BringBackOurGirls showed the power of collective action, so use your voice on platforms like X to pressure governments to prioritize child safety, fund education, and address root causes like poverty and corruption that fuel groups like Boko Haram. Let's build a world where every child can learn without fear, where girls can dream as boldly as the Chibok students did, a world they deserved but were denied. To the Chibok girls and their families, your resilience in the face of unspeakable adversity is a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. Your story urges us to never stay silent in the face of injustice. If this story touched you, please subscribe, share, and tell us. How do you advocate for safe education in your community, ensuring no child faces the terror the Chibok girls endured? What steps do you take to support safe education? Let us know in the comments.